Good morning. Today is the fourth day of second Adar. It's Pi Day, the 14th of March, 3.14. We had a lot to say about Pi. I should have spoken about Pi today, but I guess we're going to look at the fifth reading of Parshat Pekudei. In the Wonders, we only got up to the fourth reading because we ran out of space, but in these classes, we go over the extra material also that doesn't go into the magazine. Today's reading is about Moses constructing, actually putting together the tabernacle, or being commanded to do so. He doesn't do it yet because God commands him to do it on the first day of the month of Nisan. And yesterday we talked about the fact that he started doing this on the 23rd day of Adar, and for 7 days he apparently put it together and took it apart every day, and doing the rituals that were related to anointing, to inaugurating both the tabernacle and Aaron and his children, who were to be the priests. So he says to him, on the first day, we're looking at Exodus 40, verse 2, chapter 40, verse 2. On the first day of Nisan, the first month, you shall erect the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. You shall place there the ark of testimony, and you shall screen the ark with the curtain. You shall bring in the table and set up its arrangement, meaning the showbread, and you shall bring in the menorah and light its lamps. You shall place the golden incense altar in front of the ark of testimony, and you shall place, I don't know what emplace is, the entrance screen for the tabernacle. Set up the courtyard all around, and place the screen for the entrance of the courtyard. You shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all its contents. You will sanctify it and all its utensils, making it holy. You shall anoint the sacrificial altar and all its utensils. You will sanctify the altar, making the altar become holy of holies. And you shall anoint the laver, the sink, with its base, the basin, and make it holy. You shall bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting and immerse them in water of a mikveh. And you shall dress Aaron in the holy garments and anoint him. And you will sanctify him, and he shall minister to me. And he does the same thing for the children. So the common thing here is not just to put everything together, but to anoint it. The anointing is done with what we call the anointing oil, about which we read at the very beginning of Parshat Kitisa. I just want to remind you a little bit of what it said there. It was right after the half shekel. And the sink, the basin. And that's in Exodus 30, verse 22. God then spoke to Moses, saying, you shall take for yourself choice spices, 500 shekels of pure myrrh, and of fragrant cinnamon, half portions each anointing to 250 shekels, 250 shekels of aromatic cane, and 500 shekels of cassia, of the sacred shekels, as well as a hin of olive oil. The hin of olive oil is the part that's most important, because really the spices themselves only have fragrance. They're only given fragrance. You don't mix it all up. What you're trying to do is extract the scent out of the spices and put it on a medium. And the medium here was the olive oil. And so the olive oil was an entire hin. A hin is 12 lugs. And lug is about half a liter. So if we had 12 lugs here, it was about 6 liters worth of oil. Now I want to read to you from Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, when he talks about the laws of preparing the vessels for the tabernacle. And he says like this: it is a positive commandment to prepare the anointing oil so that it will be ready to use for those articles that require anointing. And these are the articles we just saw. As Exodus 30:25 states, and you shall make it as the oil of sacred anointment. While in the wilderness, Moses, our teacher, had it prepared, meaning he prepared it himself. he took the equivalent of 500 shekels of the holy shekalim of musk. Musk is myrrh. Same thing as myrrh is musk. In Yiddish they say musya, and that's where the name Chaya Mushka comes from. Chaya Mushka is basically musk. Musk is mushka. Cinnamon and costus, and the equivalent 250 shekels of fragrant cane. The Torah statement, and fragrant cinnamon half its measure, 250, implies that the entire quantity should be weighed out in two measures, 250 shekels each time. Each one should be ground separately, mixed together, then soaked in pure sweet water until all of its power was extracted into the water. A hin, which is equivalent to 12 log, with each log comprising 4 revivot of oil, was placed above the water. The entire mixture was then cooked over fire until the water boiled off, and only the oil remained. It was then set aside for future generations. Now, he says like this: one who willfully prepares anointing oil in this manner and with these measurements, without adding or reducing the quantity of the herbs, is liable for karet, meaning that he is liable to be cut off. His soul is liable to be cut off from its source. Why is this? Because the Maimonides, following the sages, understands that this was a commandment specifically to Moses. It was not meant to be recreated again. This is the only time that this anointing oil was created. And once Moses had already anointed the tabernacle, there was no need to ever do it again. So there's a whole question: was this ever done in the temple? No, because the vessels in the tabernacle were the same vessels in the temple. They took them from the tabernacle and they moved them to the temple. The basin and the ark and the gold altar and so on, it was all the same vessels. And if someone prepares it unknowingly, must bring a fixed sin offering. One who makes such a command shall be cut off from his nation. The above applies provided he prepared it for anointment. If, however, he prepared it for practice or to give to other people, he is exempt. So there's a question here: what do you mean he prepared it for practice? We just said that you're not supposed to prepare it again. So what's the idea that you prepared it for practice? So the idea is that he wasn't preparing it to practice anointing in the temple. That doesn't need anymore. But rather, the reason he's doing it is he's learning how to create these oils. He's just learning how to do it, and it happened to be that it was the same quantities as what Moses had been told to use. One who anoints himself with an olive-sized portion of the oil of anointment willfully, meaning somebody decides to anoint himself. He finds this big cylinder where all this oil was stored, and he decides to anoint himself. He is also liable for karet. He is also liable to be cut off. If he anoints himself unknowingly, he must bring a fixed sin offering, and one who applies it to an unauthorized person, meaning not to the priests, shall be cut off from his nation. One is liable only for anointing oneself with the oil of anointment made by Moses, as the proof text states, from it, meaning from the oil of which it states, this will be oil for sacred anointing for me. No other anointing oil was ever made aside from that made by Moses. Now, what is this idea? Why is it that this was never made again? He must have used it. They must have needed it. What if there's a new priest? You're supposed to anoint the priest. How do you anoint the priest if you run out of oil? The explanation is, sages say something that's almost difficult to understand, but you can understand it very easily, actually. They say, this oil never ran out. The same amount of 12 logs, one hin, that Moses made was always there. And at some point, they didn't need the oil anymore. Instead, if you remember, we talked about this, that the high priest was not anointed. He didn't need to be anointed. There's two ways in which a high priest can be made. One of them is by anointing him, the way that Moses does here for Aaron and his sons. The other way is just the fact that he wears the 4 extra articles of clothing turns him into a high priest. And we said that was actually better. Why? Because by receiving something that's not yours. You just wear some clothing that gives you humility. It's not your doing. It's not something that you merited. It's rather something that was given to you from above. And that kept the high priest checked and in a state of self-nullification. However, the oil was no different. Because this oil is related directly to Moses, and it's always referred to as the anointing oil made by Moses, there's an idea that's brought in Kabbalah that this oil is actually not, it's not the physical quality that's important. Actually, this oil was a way of Moses anointing, in the same way that you would ordain someone. He's anointing things. He's giving them his own inner quality. What is Moses' inner quality? His inner quality is a self-nullification. As we say many times, shemen, oil, is always related to wisdom. And that's one of the sources from which we get this connection between wisdom, oil, and self-nullification. So actually what he was doing when he was anointing all these parts of the tabernacle, and remember, he did this for the tabernacle, he did it for all the vessels inside. What he's doing is he's giving them the quality of eternity. When somebody achieves self-nullification, when this oil is given over to something, when it's anointed for the priest, what it's giving them is the quality of self-nullification. It's making them eternal. So we have an eternal facet in all of these parts of the tabernacle, both in the inanimate and in the human. In the inanimate, all these vessels are still the same vessels. They've never been changed, and they still exist somewhere. We don't know exactly maybe where. We believe that the ark is underneath the floor of Mount Moriah, what today is called the Temple Mount. We know that some of the vessels were taken to Rome. We also know that the tabernacle was stored underneath the floor of Mount Moriah. It's also there. It's archived there somewhere underneath. And all these things are eternal in the sense, again, of being in a state of holiness, which is a state of self-nullification. And this is very important to understand. Holiness is being apart from something. The question is, what does it mean when it comes to a human being? When a human being is said to be holy, what we say is that he's apart from himself, meaning he's not living for his own needs. He's not living for his betterment. His whole life is dedicated in some way, and that is like being anointed by the same oil that Moses anointed all the vessels of the tabernacle with and the tabernacle itself. And that is what gives a person an eternal facet. It gives them the ability to exist forever in some sense. And that's why many times we say that the oil is like a sign or like a symbol for the soul. Especially this type of oil, which is considered to be holy, is a symbol for the soul that is eternal. In the same way, being anointed or having this oil on us is like having a sense of self-nullification that gives us eternal being, that never needs to change. Like in the same way that all this oil that Moses made was never changed afterwards and was never made again. Thanks for joining. Hope to see you tomorrow.